There's never been such an event that's so much fun with so much dry material.
It's a blast.
You have to take economics out of the conference room and out of academia, because economics is about the business of ordinary people's lives.
Good evening, everybody. It's fantastic to have you all here.
Places just like Ireland suffered from potato famine because you have monoculture. Places with that equivalent monoculture will suffer, namely Saudi Arabia. Systems that, and then you take, let's take oil, okay? We depend on oil and stuff like that, but the error is going to go in one direction rather than the other, in the sense that if I have to figure out if there's randomness in the system, oil would suffer more than benefit, because we may discover a new battery tomorrow. Actually, we did discover a new battery last week. We keep discovering ways to store electricity, which is what the bottleneck was. So all these pressure will go one way to worsen the oil situation, therefore fragilize Saudi Arabia more one way than the other. The rule is everything fragile will eventually break. That's the first rule. All right? Everything fragile will eventually break. So you take what's the most fragile country in the world today? Saudi Arabia. Okay.
Why is it fragile?
Okay, there's something, when I was writing The Black Swan, okay, I make actually some inverse prediction in Black Swans that played out, all of them, except for one. Let me tell you, not yet. I asked people, a crowd, I told them there are two countries. One of them has had 40 governments over the last X years, 40 years. And the other one, and then the two sets of countries. One, 40 governments. The other one, one of them had the same family, father and son, for 40, 50 years. And the other one had the same family for the last 100 years. Which country is more unstable? Everybody said the country that had 40 governments is more unstable. Now, I was in that country recently looking for your book in a train station. That country was Italy, and it's still standing. The other two countries, I wrote on The Black Swan, the other two countries are going to blow up. The other two countries, one of them was, I'll let you guess, the first one, Syria, all right? And the second one is Saudi Arabia. So far, we got Syria right, out of the two. Saudi Arabia is the second shoe to fall, because it would look like Libya or something like that. Why? Because you can easily predict that a system that has experienced no political volatility, doesn't have any distributed stuff, is very centralized in decision-making, has all the attributes to fall apart. And that should oil collapse, what would happen, all the support we are going to get from the Western government, hypocrites, okay, supporting Saudi Arabia, that's financing ISIS and financing September 11 and financing all these things, will now start opening the files, what we haven't seen about September 11, the 23 pages, and we say, oh no, we're not going to support the Saudi government anymore. So it's not propped up by the United States, it's not propped up by Obama, and with Iran across the street from them, it's going to collapse. So everything fragile will collapse, and Saudi Arabia is one of them. So this is one to collapse, and if it collapses, it will definitely look like Libya or Iraq. Okay.
What happens in Argentina? In Argentina, we have a system that it's a political system that's been hit many, many times. So it's like it's kind of a building that it's constructed against a tsunami, so that apparently no matter what hits us, the tsunami, the political system still is in place, but it's losing parts. Yeah. So this is what I mean, that the crisis erode the very institutions that are supposed to cope with the crisis, and this has been happening many times in Argentina. So when that happens, there is another thing that it's embedded into it, which is not only is difficult to forecast, but also it's difficult to see what were the causes, and it's difficult to relate cause and consequence in Argentina. And that makes it very hard for you to learn in the future, to avoid certain mistakes, or to try to build more anti-fragile structures. So, and it's been like this for the last 40 years. So when you ask me, are people concerned about the migration crisis in Argentina? No. Are they concerned about Russia? No. Are they concerned about China? Maybe a little because commodity prices in the last years depended a lot on China's growth. But what are they concerned of? 25% inflation rate. So when you have a country like that, your main concern is surviving every day.
You know, in Saudi, there is a build-up to the 1917 revolution in Russia, where you have a young, radicalized, urbanized population who are not particularly well educated. They're blocked. There are too many glass ceilings in their place. There's no meritocracy. It's too much of a clan-based system. And history teaches you that at some point, that powder does ignite. There's too much gas in the system to hope that we're just going to find a way through here, unless there is a way in which we can solve problems. And it doesn't give, I think, anybody any confidence how we've tried to solve things in the situation in Syria.
Let me explain my situation. I'm a Christian from the Near East, Orthodox Christian, and we've been, Islam came to us in the 7th century, and so we've lasted 13 centuries under Islam, but it was not the same Islam as today. The Islam that you have today that's militant, it has been contaminated completely by Saudi Arabia, by the Wahhabi government, the friend of the United States, the friend of Great Britain, the friend of Europe, Saudi Arabia. So they've changed Islam to radicalize it. For example, me as a Christian, I'm considered a person of the book, so we survived, because for Islam it was not a big deal. And in Peter Frankopan's book, he said that Islam considered itself a sect of Christianity initially. And they treated us as, you know, just like an Orthodox would be treated by a Catholic. 1950, these people started funding, getting some money, started funding Wahhabi fundamentalism. September 11 is a product of that, okay? And of course, ISIS is a product of that. And at some point, we have to wake up and realize that Saudi Arabia is behind all of this. And an oil price at $4 is something I pray for every morning. I wake up, you know, I don't know what you pray for, stuff like that. So Saudi Arabia would go bankrupt, and stuff have their own problem, and they would leave us alone. And then would be probably, hopefully, within a generation, would revert to what we had before them, hopefully. So
get out of fossil fuels is the way to end ISIS. Is it, if we get out of fossil fuels, that will bring down militant Islam?
If we get $4 oil, then they'd be busy with each other, and they would stop from. I mean, it's basically $55 billion were spent on madrasas, promotion, all kind of stuff. I was in Malaysia, and of course, that's where they find their market. Places like Malaysia, where they go fund, or they have all these Wahhabi preachers operating. So $55 billion were spent on that. I mean, you go to Argentina. Argentina, they have a center in Buenos Aires, okay, actively. So that's the problem with militant Islam. That's the first thing. And the second thing, please separate between the Iranian type of Islam, the Shiite type of Islam. That's not. I mean, it resembles Catholicism, and it's good. What's good and what's bad, in the sense that they have a structure. It's like a church structure. They're not militant in any negative sense. They don't have suicide bombers, and they no more than other regular religions. So maybe that brand of Islam, okay, will probably protect. Will be more of an ally of the West than Saudi Arabia. So Iran is a much better ally, although they're moody, whatever, they've got the nicest people to deal with, easiest to deal with, but they're going to be the ally of the West. So I was nice, no? It was nice?
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, you got me out of a hole there.
No, but usually, you've asked me this question in 2008 on the BBC, I would have flown in a state of rage. Now look how nice it means.
Life is good now, though, isn't it? Yeah.
No, it's not that life is good. It's that I figured out to work with a positive. This is what we can predict. We can predict that an idiot is eventually going to crash a plane.